Welcome, 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 brother. Happy Thursday to you.
Hey, happy Thursday to you as well. Good to see you here again.
It's always good to see you. I cherish this time in the Rose Garden. I couldn't wait to meet up with you this week. So much has been going on. So I finally got liberated from my invalid and 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 miraculously, as healing goes, now that she's returned back into her natural environment, I don't get any complaints of pain. I don't have the bell ringing to provide massages and ice. So clearly the healing was the environment. So
Oh, interesting. It was the loving environment. She told me though my sister did good over there with her.
I was providing lots of support, but I'm gonna tell you, she definitely had me working the role of Benson instead of mom. I mean, that bell was a going. I mean, it was every couple of minutes, could I assist? Could I
Don't you
help?
love it? Don't you love it?
Hey, there are wonderful parts about being a parent, right? There are wonderful parts about being a parent. And but and I don't mind the caregiving. But here's something that I noticed that I don't think I was cued into before this situation happened
You know, what's that?
is that, people want you to care give for them the way they want to receive the giving. And sometimes I want to provide the support that I think is valuable and necessary, right? And so I think you change. There's a transition that occurs in parenting when your kids get older, where they have a greater voice, which is expected, but sometimes they're not as open to receiving the guidance and feedback from the older wiser parent. And so I personally have really struggled with that in her healing journey. What I noticed is that I was responding with my own fears about her pain and my own fears about her healing that she didn't have. And so I had to let that go, because I think I was holding her back from, like I said, when she got back to her home, uh, she has miraculously healed. I mean, I don't have any complaints of pain. The pain scaling is reduced. I talked to her just earlier today, and I said, how's the pain? She said, it only hurts during certain times, but I'm good. I can go throughout my day. I said, okay, great.
That's good to hear.
It was really good to hear. So, but I learned some lessons about myself, about really how I'm responding with a lot of fear in this parenting role that I need to let go of. But also just balancing, like being a parent of older children and letting them make their own decisions. And that's really been difficult for me. I think, I always tell people the reason why me and my kids have a relationship is because I'm their mother. I'm not interested in being anything else. Like I may not have picked them mugs to be my friends.
Yeah, I feel that's been my similar frame of mind as well. And what I've been conveying to my kids too is that my role is their father. But at the same time, I hear what you're saying because we're simultaneously self-centered beings ourselves, right? Because honestly, man, I really believe that a person, for each individual, they literally are the center of their own universe, right? And to be able to set aside your own selfish responsibility for self and then to pick up somebody else's, right, is really a challenge in and of itself.
And
But
that's
I
what parenting is, setting your aside and picking up all these responsibilities. And, I hear all these people talk about it, but then I'm like, how many people really live it and embody it? And I can really, I'm a champion and pat my own self on the back and recognize that the experiences that I have as a parent were not given to me. Like, so they weren't, besides the love that we were receiving from our grandmother, who really, for all intents and purposes, no matter what, she wasn't our parent. She was still our grandmother. And the older I get, now that I have my own grandchildren, I recognize the tension between that role. Because as a grandparent, you really want to provide and give and then love and spoil and then give those children back.
but she had to be our mother. She
Right,
had to be our parent. So I think that, that traditional role of grandparent wasn't something that she could do. She
right.
actually had to step into fill those more direct shoes. And I would say that definitely in my perspective of her is that she was the only mother I know.
Right.
And, even though we do technically have a biological mom, But I think in terms of the the things that you get from an actual mother or the way that you think about a mom, I get that from grandmother, our
Yeah.
grandmother. And
Yeah.
it's funny, I was thinking that like I said, everything I do, I see her signature in it in my life. From if I go into the kitchen to cook a meal, I think about her. If I go to the bathroom, I think about her. If I go into my bedroom to lay in my bed, I think about her because her imprint is there. The
Right.
way I make my
Wait a
bed,
minute. Wait a minute.
you know.
When have you been in the kitchen? I've never seen you behind a pot or a pan.
You see me in the kitchen many a time.
You know how to stir 'em.
Hey, a person got to live. You got to eat, right? You got to survive.
Well, the person I know, you have many a folk that like is willing to feed you, and those folks show up unexpectedly, expectedly in different versions of theyselves. But you know what you do is you use it under the umbrella of these are my friends. So it seems like you have a lot of friends that come.
I don't have to admit because to me, the terminology of friend and family it means something. It's a serious meaning to me. So
Right,
I have corrected that recently with some people who have reached out to me that happen to be females, right? And they reach out to me and they want to play this friend role and pretend, on the pretenses of being friends. And I set the level straight with them, which is that we ain't friends. I told them we're acquainted strangers, right? We're acquainted strangers. You know how like I know your name, and as much as I know your name, I could put that name with the face that you have. But beyond that, we know nothing about each other.
okay,
We
okay,
can't we can't say that we are friends because I was thinking, what is the actual definition of friend?
okay.
And then what is the actual definition of family, as it translates to. But I think that when somebody is an actual friend, then there's a expectation that there's some care there between the two, which means that they have to know each other.
Right, right,
So so without anything else being represented in there, just knowing each other and care being there,
right.
that means that the underlying thing is that there had to be some time spent with each other to be able to develop both of those conditions. But yeah, I can't put friend on certain people. That's too much honor for I feel like that's an honor privilege to be able to have that designated.
What I have a couple questions in my mind as you speak, but bringing it back to the cooking. So, do you eat food from only friends, or can these honorary strangers that are in your life who happen to have your phone number, do you eat their food too, or how does that work?
Yeah, well, you know what? I think people who actually really know me will know the answer to this question, right? Because I don't eat
Right?
I
Know you.
don't eat off of everybody's hand. But I would even say that people, when they bring food, like if a person ever really does observe me, like when I go to other people's houses, I usually don't eat food at other people's houses.
Right,
Yeah, because I'm particular about that kind of stuff. And if I haven't observed that people directly prepare the food and all this stuff, like I usually don't eat at houses. And that's an etiquette and a respect thing too, because I think it's for certain people, they actually are preparing food out of love and they want you to indulge in it, but that's a really difficult thing for me, you know.
right.
So if I do that, that means that I'm setting aside my natural self to make that person feel appreciated. You know what I mean? But
Well,
you I don't. And if people bring over food that I don't eat off their hand, I don't eat it. I just redistribute it to the community.
what I'm going to do is I think I need to be more observant because I have experience with my own eyes that attached to my head, lots of friends in your life. And this is such a like important conversation now because I had this discussion with my husband recently about can men and women really be friends, right? And our perspectives were so glaringly different. And I'll tell you, my perspective was that absolutely men and women can be friends. I have male friends, and really I've been putting them in the box of friends, and this is how I'm supported in those relationships. From my husband's perspective, it was nope. Every male that's around you has a primitive desire to want to knock that down. And even if they're showing up in your life, even if they're showing up in your life as friend, it is a masquerade, and you have to be careful not to join folk in their masquerade ball. So, that can create tension for relationships that you built throughout time with the opposite sex. And I say that too because I've seen some women in your kitchen that I don't know.
Well, I'm gonna say this. That first of all, I mean, if it's the question of if men and women can be friends or not, that's one of those questions that really has a yes or no response to, right? But in this case, I think that if we're going to talk in a general sense, then I would say in general, the general rule of thumb would be no. Because in order for men and women to be friends, then I think a certain set of conditions need to be there, right? And one of those things is that both of the individuals that are part of that bond, they got to be at a certain maturity level, right? So I would say that a lot of people are always looking for a license for bad behavior. So to be sensitive of that,
Tell me
be
what you
sensitive.
mean by that. Tell me what you mean by that.
Yeah, I mean, because if a person was to say that yes, men and women could be friends, then they would just be thinking like, well, this perspective says that this is possible. So, I'm a flirt with this or entertain this in a way, and I'm seemingly meaning to be good, but ultimately, if it doesn't work out, you know, it's not my fault, right? But I think that take your situation, right, where you said you and your husband are having this dialogue. So I think that's a special case, right? Because you and your husband are part of a marriage bond, which means that for all intents and purposes, two people have become one. So then you would examine how can there be a man that's a friend to you that's also not a friend to your husband?
But that
So
doesn't
that
wait a minute, you're making an assumption that in that discussion, the persons or the people that we were describing were not friends. So and that I think you bring up a interesting point that I want to highlight, but then there's some things I want to go back to that you just said is that friendships then in a marital dynamic
yeah,
be one that's expansive and inclusive of the spouse, okay? Which I would agree with. And I would also say that when that doesn't happen, my coin and use my husband's terms, the masquerade ball may be real, right? But I do think to go
yeah,
back to what you said before in the very beginning when you're talking about to be called friend, you was over there, giving me that dialogue about, to be called my friend. I think you have to have a connection and a knowingness and this responsibility in the relationship if that's what we are saying, right? That there's a responsibility in the relationship, then certainly those ground rules have been established. The knowing has been established. So, in my view, absolutely males and females can be friends because when you're talking about a friend, you are situating them in a social part of your life in your world that's functional and reciprocal. So, when I have, let's just say, even my female friends, right? They understand who I am and off rip appreciate who I am. That's what makes them my friends. They come to me understanding that they want to support me. There's a reciprocal love that's happening in that relationship. And for me, it's not unspoken with my friends what I need. So, like, I need unconditional acceptance because three ain't for everybody, right? So read it out for everybody. So I need unconditional acceptance. I need honesty. I need support. I need all of those things. And those things are not unspoken. So like when
So it sound like you agree with me then that ultimately
I don't know if I'm in agreement though.
it sounded like what did you call it, a merit, whatever the marital, I forget the status of that you termed it, but it needs to be expansive and inclusive, which I agree with. Like, I can't imagine how on either side of the equation that if you marry that there's a friend that your spouse doesn't know. Because once again, like I said, like the condition of that friend becoming to know you, then they should automatically know the people that are important in your life, right?
Correct. That's that.
Yeah.
That's that.
So that so one would think that that exists, right? So those, but I could understand where, a person, because I've heard Steve Harvey and other people mention the same thing, that
Or
the
you gonna
same, but I bring those folks up because I think that they really are connected with their primordial, the primal base, and if they're representing the male side of it too.
well, the
So, but
thing
they're,
is, let's clarify. You just pick somebody who has
yeah,
been an adulterer. Open, right? It's not, it's not my judgment because this is not me
yeah.
going in
These are
judgment.
facts. These are facts. These ain't opinions. It's a fact that that man had multiple wives. That the man has been, allegedly adulterous. You know what I mean? The may have admitted to it. You know,
And publicly deceptive to the people because he at one point had a hair piece. So this is not, so when you're bringing to the examples of the people that you're going to describe in this discussion with me, recognize I am going to evaluate the source and then say why I have to challenge it. But for the
well,
purpose, go ahead. I'm gonna
I I like that you're doing that, right? But I was just saying that, I think we're on the same page with the sources, because what I'm saying is that from their frame of thinking, a man cannot be a true friend to a female because the man always has ulterior motives, which is to conquer the woman through sex, right? So once he makes her a conquest, then really his underlying agenda is to smash, right? And so all of what he's doing, leading up to this, and it could be the long con game, the long patience thing, and all this stuff is to accomplish this goal, right? But I think, a condition of being somebody's friend is not having any sort of idea of exploitation. Because I think even when a dude cares nothing about a girl, but he wants to exploit her sexually, there's still something there, some reason why he wants to do that, right? Ultimately, to have some sincere intentions, right, where you actually do take time to get to know someone, you know, and there are no ulterior motives there, that you do not have no agenda to exploit that other individual in any kind of way. And I think also in reverse, because, to me, the most common thing between men and women is that men trying to exploit women sexually. And the most common thing is women are trying to exploit men financially. You know, some time a woman trying to get get at a man to be a part of her life for some level of survival.
minute. Wait a
With the girls, I heard these girls, they was in college or whatever, and they had a hookup, you know. And it's, thank God females can do this, right? Because, the poor men that are struggling in college, boy, they can't use this same technique, right? But the females, they able to have a hookup here at this restaurant, the hookup here at that restaurant, and they all exploiting those men off of their ulterior motives,
Wait a
right?
minute. Wait a minute. You have to do some clarification because what I'm struggling with is the term exploitation because
Yeah.
exploitation means it has the tenor, and I don't know if this is what you mean. So I'm gonna give you opportunity to clarify because if it is what you mean, then we're gonna have to talk about it in the rose garden.
Right.
Exploitation is one where you are hoping to bastardize or use. And so if that's what you mean when you say women have the underlying intention to bastardize and or use a man financially, I need some help with that.
Well, most of the time that's the case, right? Because
Why?
I think that most of the time the instinct goal for females with the men around them, especially ones that the intentions are questionable, like where they might know, hey, this dude really trying to do some tender touching, right? But I don't really like that dude like that. But I'm a I'm gonna play around with him in this because I'm trying to exploit that man financially. I can
Women
feel that need, you know, I got some tires I need to be replaced on my car or something like that. So I'm gonna try to get at that man financially. Now these are most common ways.
want you to believe this because you are a single person. So I want to heal you in this survival journey of intimacy and connectedness that I see that you need some help with. So let me help you for a second. I don't want you to use common. I think what you are describing is certainly an outlier. I believe that there may be, and I do not want to diminish your experience. So I'm going to say that you may have encountered someone who has been exploitative in nature. What I want to bring you back to, though, is when most people are selecting a partner and mate, that's not their intention. Now, from a kind of hierarchy of needs, we do need as individuals food, we do need as individuals
Well,
financial
let's
support.
let's do some calibration on some certain points, right? Because we weren't talking about men and women selecting mates. We talking about just friendships, just
Wait,
connection.
but I keep trying to show you on your journey. We can go back to that in a second because I do think we did lose our way. But I want to heal you on your journey because the words you use invited me to your heart and your experience. And on that heart and experience, I heard the words exploitative, and I heard you say that men, from a primitive, primordial perspective, tend to exploit the women sexually. On the opposite end is that the women are exploiting individuals financially. And what I want you to see is that may be have been true in some of your experiences, but I think that's more of an outlier. I think when people come together, they come together and are attracted to individuals for various things. I think women more commonly come together with a man based on how they can protect and support them. And because
It's interesting that like I think from the side of the female side voice of it, because I think we agree that men orientation in terms of intention when they connecting with females is a sexual underlying motive, right? So I think we agree on that.
Okay, but I don't want women can too. I'm not sleeping with nobody. I mean, I don't want to just. I mean, when you
What I want to say, the general thing is don't think of it as my experiences that I'm just speaking to, because I'm also talking about personal observations, that I see of everything around me and
okay,
other men's experiences, right? But then also what I see just of the women around me too, their experiences. But I think definitely when it comes to women, if women will be accountable about this, that they are exploiting the men financially, but the financial part of that equates to security in their mind. Now, what I would say is that definitely from my own personal experience, I can't say that I feel this way because I feel like I had a lot of interactions with females when I was dead broke. I probably had more interactions with women when I had nothing at all than I do when I have assets right
so
now.
Bill,
So I said, so this don't really come directly from my own personal experience because I feel like I've been lucky enough where females haven't en masse been able to exploit me. But then again, I'm not coming from a trick perspective, like a trick mindset.
right?
But I would say that this is a general observation that in general, I think women definitely targeted men that have status and assets and means that translates to finances. And what they want from that man is the finances.
Well,
And what they want from that woman is the sexual indulgence.
I'm going to disagree with you.
Okay. All right.
I'm going to
Well, I
disagree.
want to know what they want other than the finances then. What if it's not, what is it that they want?
disagree with you because what I want you to kind of experience for your own ears is don't you since some of this is coming from your observations. Have you never seen a man who was cared for by a woman?
Care for by a
Financially,
woman, what by a woman other than a relative?
yes. A
Well,
girlfriend, a partner, a spouse.
those things are rare. Like, I mean, like, in general, like, you can see there's a two-headed person or a three-headed person. Like, in general,
Women
people don't have three heads or two heads. So you could see this thing happen, but normally it doesn't. But I would say this, right? We're men and women.
look in your own pool for a second and
Yeah,
just go about 4.5 degrees of separation.
right, right,
And I
right.
want you to really look at those people because I know you know them and I love them too. How many of them have not been in situations where they give very little other than their sexual prowess,
Right,
and
right.
women are the ones taking care. I'm telling you to go 4.5 degrees separate.
No, I'm telling you that in general, that phenomenon may exist. But I also would say that my personal experience in the relationships I have is exceptional. They're not really normal. You know what I mean? So I couldn't say because I might know some dudes who they're attractive enough men that women desire them just for the physical presence that they bear off, right?
Right.
But that doesn't really last long in the grand scheme of things because they want the other aspects of what they want from a man to bring to the table. But I could prove the point I'm making to you on this stuff, right? Because let's just say the man gets what he wants from a woman, right? A typical generalized man, right? Gets what he wants from a woman, which is conquering her sexually, right?
Okay.
And let's just say once that happens, if the dude changes his mind and wants to go somewhere else, he doesn't care about coming back here sexually anymore, right? So he got what he wanted, and it's over and done with, right? So using that same frame of reference, like the logic overlay on that with the female, right? Say she get with a dude, things don't work out, and all this stuff. Rarely does a woman say, "I want nothing to do with that man at all." Rarely does that happen. Usually what they say is, I don't want nothing to do with him personally, but I want him to financially take care of me. I want spousal support. I want child support. I want lifestyle subsistence support. But why, if this wasn't a point of exploitation for the man, if that is a accoutrement that comes with being with that man, why do they not say, I don't want nothing? I want to remove every association from that man, which a man will do that when he's done with the woman. I don't want nothing to do with her. I don't want to deal with I don't want to hear nothing from her. Treat her like she's a ghost, a speck of sand. But why did the woman do that? Why didn't she say,
Give
I,
me give you a lesson because my time and my body is valuable. And currency of this situation, the physical aspect of it was not enough. So just for these situations that you're describing where we're in these exploitative dynamics, the currency of it, of sex being the currency, and let's be real about like, men have an interesting way of believing that sex is this grand experience that drops so much like it's worth. I'm going to tell you if we had to do it in terms of a commodity, um,
yeah,
uh probably like aluminum
aluminum compared to what?
to gold. Let me inform you. So aluminum is quite plentiful. It's pliable.
Right, right,
It's
right,
available.
right.
You can get it in available sources. Gold is very different, quite prestigious, needs to be mined to be available. It does not exist in these great United States that we know of, right?
Huh.
After the gold rush in California, you can't find a bunch of gold. So sex is like aluminum.
Well, I can see why.
And with a woman, wait, let me give it to you. Being with a woman who not
Uh,
only has to help you out and often help support you and nurture you and care about your feelings. And you just said feed you. You got to be in the kitchen feeding you early on. We was talking about that. I see myself as gold. So when if we're looking at it in terms of a commodity, your little bit of aluminum doesn't do anything for the gold. And so when that aluminum is gone and you're asking what is needed to sustain the gold, then absolutely child support if there are children around is needed. Spousal support, equal distribution of assets. Because oftentimes, and if we being real, that woman has helped you write a resume, has had practice, given you practice for interviewing, introduced you to people who can expand your network, attended events, been your sideshow pony. All those things are valuable. And when they're discarded, and you're talking about what you describe it as a relationship that it seems like the woman did not necessarily want it to end, then there is a return on investment that is required.
Well, first of all, I can appreciate your perspective. And I think it really supports and validates mine, right? Because I would say the reason why you probably view sex as aluminum, and you view the things that you bring to the table as gold is because of this key fundamental difference between men and women, which I think this double standard favors the woman, which is sex for a woman is being offered to her almost daily by almost every man that she's coming across, right? So, okay, you could be the most handsome, physically fit, wealthy man in the world, and you could take the very average, the other end of the spectrum for a female. You put these two together, we could run this experiment, and that experiment would be put them in a densely populated urban environment like Miami or New York or someplace like this, and you have them walk up to the opposite sex, random people of the opposite sex, and ask them, "Would you like to have sex with me?" Now, on the man's side, I think by the time he got to the third request, he's gonna get smacked. We're gonna get the police call on him and all this stuff. On the woman's side, the dudes probably are, is this serious? Or is it a joke? Is this trick question or whatnot? If it's real, I think it'd be hard pressed. Eight out of 100 dudes they ask, they might be lucky to get one that say no. And that one that would say no would say it because of moral conviction that he has. But so because of this disparity in it, which basically what I'm saying is sex to a man ain't easy to get, right?
Okay.
That's why men are always on the hunt for it. They're always seeking this thing so that they can add another notch. Let me hit my clicker. Boom, I got that. Boom, boom, boom. They adding notches to their belt all the time. And it's really an ego stroke, right?
That's
But but at the end of the day though, the same things exist. Like when you are connected with a person,
fair.
besides the financial impact of that person in your life, they're doing a lot for you too. So all of the above. Like, but let's just take somebody like a Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan or something like this, right? Those men certainly did not have a woman that helped them to achieve the level of greatness that they did. That
On
was
the basketball court. That might be true.
in their area of Trojan profession that led to their generation of wealth, right? How they got money, right? The way that they got money had nothing to do with a woman. They had to do
They
that and
able
she
and I would say perhaps, but in Michael Jordan's case, how he was learned to brand was through his first wife. There was some messaging and support that woman, you can never diminish what she brought to the table.
she came along after he had wealth generation. So I do not believe, but if a person is capable of it, so this is what I'm saying to you that I see of these men though, right?
Mhm.
most men are capable of income generation, right? Or they have to. Now, I can't say most men either because that's not
Because
really true.
knock that down.
But
And
I would say, like, if a man is capable of so whoever in the story where the authenticity lies is the person that can redo it. So I think that if a woman has that much power and influence over a man, then why can't she do that again for her own self?
many of them have.
Why does it she have to desperately still cling on to that nest egg, the golden egg, right? That's good for her, so she's
You do
yeah,
realize you're talking about a particular brand of woman because in our country, it is Black women who en masse make more money than Black men. In our country, it is Black women who are every day becoming entrepreneurs. In our country, it is Black women who are going to school, having the baby, having the husband. We are holding it down, and our assets right now are more than Black men. Now, there are some exceptional Black men, right? Let's just say, that have exceptional talents, but I'm talking about the ones that, it's very few WNBA women who are competing with some of these like Fawn Wing. She had a grip of basketball, right? So,
right.
so, so you are comparing yourself to all these exceptional men who had something that they offered to the world, which was to entertain us, right? But let's not talk about their business prowess because I don't know enough about exactly what they do, but I also know the ones who have women behind them that hold them down. I'll use Cookie and Magic Johnson. That's a business relationship. That's a business. And together, there's a lot of dynamic things happening together. Okay. I don't know them all personally, so I can't get into their workings, but I can even say from my family.
Mhm.
It is the partnership that my husband and I have established that allow me to have the freedom to do so to meet my greatness and also to allow my husband to meet his. It is that partnership. It is that support. So I think
You can
we
I've attest to that in your situation for sure.
we
Yeah.
can agree then that how about this so that we can move on to a better topic. It does depend on what kind of relationship you have, and in a marital context there can be some exploitative situations, but principally if you're in a healthy situation, a healthy marital dynamic, you want one where you are working together in partnership and that whomever enters your life also is doing it for the betterment of your partner, which is where we started, right? We were talking about can men and women. Now, my husband fundamentally disagrees with that. He does not believe it. And so that definitely creates a tension in our marital dynamic because I think there are situations where we can. And how I believe that happens is that you do have to have a set of operate within a set of principles and with integrity. So I share with my husband most everything about my friends in terms of what they do for me, how we are in relationship with one another, and they are part of our family dynamic for the most part.
I feel that, and I can appreciate that 100%. Now, I would say going back to so first of all, I think like in order for people to have like an effective conversation, right?
Mhm.
They got to be able to agree on a certain set of general principles. You know what I mean? Otherwise, there's no way that we can cogently get anywhere. Right?
Right, right,
First, like so, principles is like, what planet are we on? Are we on Earth? We all agree we on Earth, right?
right,
And
right,
that Earth is bound by certain sorts of principles of like gravity, oxygen, and stuff like this. So certain set of shared commonalities.
right.
So what I guess what drives me crazy about women sometimes is that we can't agree to certain common things that we know these are not truths that can be challenged. We know they true,
Like
right?
what? Help me out. List them
But
out.
it's okay for it to be this way. So, like, say for instance, because I know, I've also been privy to the arguments that, I always have believed that men and women can't be friends either, right?
Mhm.
But I did evolve to a place in my life to where now I can see the set of conditions that need to exist in order for a friendship to flourish between men and women. And I do see the exception, to this to where it could be possible. And I think the fundamental thing that has to exist is that basic thing of the two parties exploiting each other for something. Because I think like in any kind of relationship, if there's an exploitation. So like right now, if a man looks at a woman and he's like, I'm gonna exploit her sexually, and if they indulge in a connection that ends up happening, then by virtue of there being a balance. So in everything that exists, there's two sides. In virtue of there being a balance, she is exploiting him for something too, whether that's quality time or something like that. There's something she's getting out of that. And she ain't just giving that up for nothing. You know what I mean?
Exploit. Why can't that just
Because I say exploit, I know it's not a feel good word, but most of the time certain things ain't feel good for what the underlying motivation is. So I say like a woman might think, and we know women like this, that there's something so special about them that makes this man want to give them uh time and energy,
Mhm.
right? Or that I hear women talk about attention, right? So a woman might say, well, he's giving me this time and energy and attention because I'm beautiful and I'm all these great things that you just told me women are and what they do for men. But technically speaking, that man don't care about none of that. Care about is, am I going to be able to make this thing happen? That's it, right? Now that's exploitative for sure,
so
right? And I say,
that that's the sheer motivation is, am I gonna be able to make this thing happen?
yeah, yeah, and I think sometimes dudes would be nice, like I hear these like mailmen and garbage men story with man. Oh, I see you need a tire change. I'm gonna change the tire, or man might open the door for a woman and all of these are offers that these dudes they checking the doorknob to see is this open a little bit or whatever. Can I come in? And the woman and women do show you these little indicators, they signaling to you that that's possible and all this stuff. So I'm saying all this to say, in order for men and women to be friends, though, both sides have to remove any, intention of exploitation of any kind, you know, and both sides do really need to, uh, in my view, take time to get to know each other truly. Otherwise, if they don't even really know each other, I can't even say that they could classify themselves as friends, right? And
Mhm.
then they should care about each other truly, care about each other's well-being. And in this, when these things exist, then like just like anything else, the two worlds that come together, everything that's in one world is going to be inherited by the other. So and if that's a significant other, because sometimes you can like I guess there's a condition of having a friend when you're single, where you don't have nobody, right?
Right, right.
And if you're single and you have a friend, um, that's different than if you're married and then you have a friend. Because if you're married and you have a friend and that friend is not also your spouse's friend, that's suspicious.
Well,
Something's wrong. That's suspicious. And I could understand if the and also the other side of your equation, if your spousal unit, your partner is feeling uncomfortable about it, it's something automatically is wrong.
okay, I'm so much about this today that we need to unpack, and I learned a lot about you and your mind. We're gonna have on your relationship with intimacy and relationships. But what so found principally though, I do think it we do agree that there has to be some foundational expectations in a relationship. I do think we need to unpack this more. What is problematic about you and your brother-in-law is that y'all live in your primitive set and your primitive experience.
We don't live there because I think we pretty involved men. I think what he's concerned about, and rightfully, is the motivation and intentions of other men.
Well, he shouldn't be concerned about that because I am in relationship with him. And so it is me who is the person that should
That
be.
is that is that is that's ultimately true. I agree with that. I
And so
agree.
you need to be concerned about no one else. Because rest assured, I'm not concerned about nothing else. None of them other scallywags that are around in my husband's orbit. I am concerned.
I hear that, but I think from a protection, his concern about your safety and all of this stuff.
You just said he concerned about getting slashed, right? It's the ultimate.
He's concerned about the intention of other men not being sincere.
None of that he can control, and he don't even. Again, I'm
That
concerned. I don't concern myself of the mind of the scallywag because what you have described today about all these exploitative individuals are they're scallywags. I don't. I not. Let me tell you something. I'm Rose
one
Carter's
side to the
grandchild.
equation.
I am Rose Carter's grandchild, and there's nothing about me ever that I ever felt that anybody could top. Grandma told me you were special, you was cute. I got twisted toes, and I think them twisted toes are special. So let me assure you that Rose did her work on me. It is not the scalawags in my husband orbit. I'm worried about him. When he does something that dishonors my relationship, it is our issue. It is not that I couldn't look. That person don't even need to show up, talk to me about it. Need to beg. They don't need to beg me for forgiveness because I don't care about them. But it is my spouse who I have made promises to and I have made commitments to, and he has done the same for me. That will become problematic. So
I hear.
that's the issue. And so instead of worried about what all these other people are doing, figure out how you can create a dynamic within your relationship where there's some share and mutual respect and agreements and principle kind of behaviors that you both follow. So if the expectation is anybody in my orbit has to be my husband's friend, then anybody in my husband's orbit need to be my friend. It should be
Percent.
no,
It gotta be fair across the board.
it's got to be fair across the board. So but there's some more work that we got to do, brother. And gosh, this time in the road garden was so freeing for me today. I didn't know we was going to go here, but I'm glad we did because I needed it because I was tight, tight, tight all week, tight with what's going on in the background, but also tight with wanting to have this dialogue about male and females and understand where the tension comes from in my own relationship. What I've learned from you is that there's a primitive aspect of males that y'all just cannot break up with. That as evolved, and as much as I see you all as these evolved creatures, y'all really do live on that little butt brain. I call that primitive part of your brain that's just and responsive. And that's how you navigate the world and you create schemas that way. And you know what? The problem is women aren't invited to your mind. So I'm so glad I get to be invited to that mind because now I know it's just this is an extinction, you know, reactionary process, and y'all can't break up with that easy. I
Well,
understand.
I'm glad you perceived that because that could probably explain a lot of what you see in the world leadership today, right?
Mm.
Because, but honestly, I think men do. That's part of the development of men naturally, because you go from that process to a more evolved man, right? And some people just are arrested in that development. They haven't really been enlightened to those certain levels. But also you helped me to see, where I would say it's the where I see the smoke coming from the machine for women, right? Because I honestly believe that women have a very difficult time embracing reality and being accountable. and when and when women are forced to do this, that there's a lot of resistance in it.
What I said.
So I take that from it, to which I love to be able to at another day drill down into it
We're
and
gonna have to do some drilling. We're gonna have to do some drilling. And you know what? I'm gonna write down some therapists for you that can that can work on that getting out of that butt brain and putting you more. But there are parts of you that are just so evolved, but this is a part that I'm seeing that is still in its infancy. But I appreciate you so much, brother. And before we
same thing. I appreciate you as well.
I thank you for your honesty and your time in the Rose Garden, and you are very much Rose Carter's grandson too, because what Rose Carter's grandson knows is that he's a valuable commodity. And your discussion was protecting the commodity. You said you're gonna exploit my earnings. You're gonna exploit my
No, I
sexual.
wasn't talking I wasn't in this conversation, I wasn't talking about me. I'm just representing the male perspective. But honestly, I don't lead with, I don't carry any of the assets that I've acquired, in front of me, At the end of the day, when a person meets me, they, I'm not shy I'm not peacocking for 'em.
You
I've actually, as you already know, I kinda show the areas in me that need some remediation, right? Because 'Cause I'll let a person accept me for all of my dark sides
right.
and love me anyway, than for them to be, trying to, latch on to the bit.
Right. Well, and I'm deeply appreciative that that's how you present yourself in the world because boy, if the other part was presented, we would have some trouble. It is always my honor to be with you. And we always end our segment elevating a black business. And my husband and I were really honored to have shopped at Shop the Hood and some
Oh,
of our
yeah.
and so we shopped at purehome.com and cleaning supplies, which is owned by a black woman who is using all natural products to help clean our home. And we have really enjoyed the two products that we got. We got the mint and lavender cleaning spray, all-purpose cleaning spray, and then we got the basil and lavender floor cleaner, and we have enjoyed it. It actually we can attest that it cleans well, has a very light smell, but it definitely cleans the surfaces and delights. It creates a delightful aroma in your home. So we are happy that we are really honoring our commitment to Shop Black, and we want everyone to check out purehome.com. Their cleaning products are the bomb.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Sounds like it's smelling really great over there.
It's smelling real good over here. We look and listen, and because Sanaa was all broken up, she couldn't help us clean. But don't worry, I got some extra spray just for her. When she come back, her to work. I'm gonna put her to work.
But make sure you, remind everybody to, if they got anything from this, to like, subscribe, comment, interact with us, share, and, we like to invite the community in to share their opinions on what we talking about. And I'm
Absolutely.
I'm sure we have a lot of, supporters on what I expressed today, because we wanna
Well, when y'all comment, be team Sharif or team Xadean. I want to know who on my side, on my team. But I think I'm more better on this one.
but we wanna remember that we are on Earth, right? We all agree that we're still on.
Well, listen, everybody, will invite you back to the Rose Garden next week at 2 p.m. Brother, I salute you. I love you. See you next week.
Need to You too, sister. Bye for now.
Bye for now.